The midday sun beat down on the dusty, forgotten town of Redemption Gap, Arizona Territory, baking the cracked earth and the dilapidated buildings until they shimmered in the heat haze. A lone rider, silhouetted against the stark blue of the desert sky, approached the town at a slow, deliberate pace. His name was Cade Dalton, a gunslinger whose reputation, though whispered more than shouted, carried the weight of a coiled rattlesnake, quiet, deadly, and best left undisturbed. Cade was a man carved from the harsh landscape he traversed. His face, weathered and lined beyond his 30-odd years, spoke of countless days spent under the unforgiving sun. His eyes, the color of gunmetal, scanned his surroundings with a perpetual alertness, missing nothing. He rode a sturdy, dust-colored Mustang named Shadow, the only constant companion in his solitary existence. Redemption Gap was a ghost of its former self. Once a bustling mining camp fueled by the promise of silver, it had withered and died when the veins ran dry, leaving behind a scattering of abandoned buildings, a silent testament to dreams that had turned to dust. Cade had no particular reason to stop here. He was simply following a hunch, a whisper of a rumor he'd overheard in a smoky saloon in Tombstone, a tale of hidden treasure, lost to time and the desert winds. As he rode down the deserted main street, the silence of Redemption Gap pressed in on him, broken only by the creak of his saddle leather and the rhythmic thud of Shadow's hooves. The buildings sagged like tired old men, their windows empty sockets staring out at nothing. A rusted sign creaked above a boarded-up storefront, the faded letters barely spelling out, "The Prospector's Dream." Cade dismounted in front of what appeared to be the most intact building, a two-story structure with a faded sign above the door that read, "The Golden Nugget Saloon." Even in its disrepair, the saloon held a certain sturdiness, a hint of the boisterous life it once housed. He tied Shadow to the weathered hitching post, the only one still standing, and pushed open the creaking doors. The interior was shrouded in shadows, the air thick with the musty scent of decay and forgotten memories. Dust lay heavy on every surface, coating the overturned tables and chairs like a ghostly shroud. A broken mirror hung crookedly on the wall, reflecting distorted fragments of the desolate room. Cade's eyes adjusted to the gloom as he moved cautiously through the saloon. He ran a gloved hand over the dusty bar, imagining the rough laughter and clinking glasses that had once filled this space. He found a relatively clean corner and settled down, his back to the wall, his hand never straying far from the Colt Peacemaker at his hip. He pulled out a water skin and took a long drink, his gaze still scanning the room. The rumor he'd heard spoke of a treasure hidden somewhere in Redemption Gap, a cache of gold and jewels stashed away by a notorious stagecoach robber named Silas the Serpent, before he vanished without a trace. Most dismissed it as a tall tale, another ghost story whispered in the desert night. But something in the way the story had been told, a certain conviction in the old prospector's eyes, had piqued Cade's interest. Days turned into a week as Cade methodically explored the deserted town. He searched the abandoned stores, the crumbling homes, even the dilapidated church, his keen eyes missing no detail. He found nothing but dust, decay, and the lingering echoes of a forgotten past. Doubt began to creep into his mind. Perhaps the old prospector had been wrong. Perhaps there was no treasure. Just as he was about to give up, Cade noticed something unusual about the Golden Nugget Saloon. The floorboards in one corner, near the old fireplace, seemed slightly uneven, as if something had settled beneath them. He knelt down, running his hand over the dusty planks. One section felt looser than the others. Curiosity piqued, Cade retrieved a small crowbar from his saddlebag. He carefully pried at the loose floorboards, the dry wood groaning in protest. After a few minutes of work, he managed to lift a section of the floor, revealing a dark, narrow space beneath. He pulled out a small lantern and lit it, the flickering light illuminating the dusty cavity. His breath hitched in his throat. Inside, nestled amongst the dirt and debris, was a heavy, wooden chest, bound with rusted iron straps. Cade's gunmetal eyes gleamed with a flicker of excitement. Could this be it? Silas the Serpent's lost treasure? He grunted with effort as he hauled the heavy chest out of its hiding place. It was surprisingly heavy, the weight suggesting it was filled with more than just empty dreams. He used the crowbar to pry open the rusted lock. The chest creaked open, revealing its contents. Cade's lantern light danced across stacks of gold coins, their surfaces dull with age but still radiating a faint golden glow. Beneath the coins lay pouches filled with glittering jewels, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, their facets catching the light and throwing off a dazzling array of colors. The rumor had been true. Silas the Serpent's treasure had been hidden right here, beneath the floorboards of a forgotten saloon in a ghost town. Cade stared at the hoard, a sense of disbelief washing over him. He, a lone gunslinger seeking nothing more than a quiet existence, had stumbled upon a fortune. But as he reached into the chest, his fingers brushing against the cool metal of a gold coin, a sudden sound shattered the silence of the saloon. A heavy footfall echoed from the doorway. Cade's hand instinctively went to his gun. He whirled around, the Colt Peacemaker drawn and leveled at the figure standing in the entrance. It wasn't a lawman. It wasn't another treasure hunter. It was a woman. She was young, barely more than a girl, with wide, frightened eyes and clothes that were dusty and torn. She looked like she had been living rough for quite some time. In her hand, clutched tightly, was a rusty old shotgun, its barrel pointed directly at Cade. "Don't move," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "That's our treasure." Cade stared at her, his gun still raised. "Our treasure?" he asked, a sense of bewilderment washing over him. "Who are you?" The girl's chin jutted out defiantly, despite the fear in her eyes. "My name is Lily. And this town, this was my family's. That treasure belongs to us." Cade lowered his gun slightly, his curiosity piqued. A lone girl, claiming ownership of a legendary outlaw's treasure in a ghost town? This was a twist he hadn't anticipated. The hidden treasure of Redemption Gap had just revealed a new, unexpected layer. Cade Dalton stared at the young woman silhouetted in the doorway of the Golden Nugget Saloon, the rusty shotgun in her trembling hands a stark contrast to her youthful appearance. Her claim to Silas the Serpent's legendary treasure hung in the dusty air, more perplexing than any locked vault. "Your family's?" Cade asked, his voice low and cautious, his gun still held loosely but ready. This treasure belonged to Silas the Serpent, a stagecoach robber. The girl, Lily, took a hesitant step inside, her eyes darting nervously between Cade and the open chest overflowing with gold and jewels. "He was my father." Cade's gunmetal eyes narrowed in disbelief. "Silas the Serpent was your father? The notorious outlaw, a figure of fear and whispered tales? A loving parent?" It seemed impossible. Lily's chin lifted defiantly. "He wasn't always that way. Before the mines dried up, before Redemption Gap started to die, he was just Silas Blackwood. A prospector. He found some luck, enough to build this saloon, this town with others." Her gaze swept around the dilapidated room, a hint of sadness in her blue eyes. But then the silver ran out. People left. Desperation set in. She hesitated, her voice dropping. "He did things he wasn't proud of. To survive. To keep us fed." Cade slowly lowered his Colt, his initial suspicion giving way to a grudging curiosity. The story, improbable as it sounded, held a certain raw truth in the girl's voice. The desperation of a dying town could twist even the most honest of souls. "And the treasure?" Cade prompted. "He stole it." Lily nodded, her gaze falling to the floor. The last big stagecoach heading out of the territory. He said it was our way out. A new start. Her voice cracked with emotion. But he never came back. They said he was killed in the getaway. Cade remembered the whispers he'd heard. Silas the serpent vanishing without a trace. Perhaps the rumors of his death had been premature, or perhaps Lily had never accepted them. How did you know it was here? Cade asked, gesturing to the chest hidden beneath the floorboards. Lily's eyes flickered back to the chest, a spark of determination in their depths. He told me. A long time ago when I was just a little girl. He said if anything ever happened to him, there was a hiding place. Under the old hearth in the Golden Nugget. He said it was our nest egg. She had been living in this ghost town, clinging to a childhood memory, waiting for a treasure that might not even exist. Cade felt a pang of something akin to sympathy for the girl. You've been here all this time? Cade asked, his voice softer now. Lily nodded. Waiting. Hoping. This town, it's all I have left of him. Of my mother. Her voice was barely a whisper. Cade considered her, the weight of the gold and jewels at his feet suddenly feeling less like a prize and more like a burden. He had come to Redemption Gap seeking a hidden fortune, but he had found something far more unexpected, a young woman clinging to the remnants of a broken past. What were you planning to do with it? Cade asked. Lily's eyes hardened slightly. Leave. Start over. Somewhere where no one knew the name Silas the Serpent. Cade understood. The shadow of her father's notoriety had likely haunted her young life. This treasure represented not just wealth, but a chance at anonymity, a chance to forge her own identity. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the whisper of the desert wind through the broken windows of the saloon. Cade looked at the girl, her face etched with a mixture of hope and wary suspicion. He looked at the chest, the tangible representation of a life lived on the fringes of the law and a daughter's desperate hope for a better future. There's enough here for you to start over, Lily, Cade said finally, his voice surprisingly gentle. Lily's eyes widened in surprise. You're just going to let me take it? Cade shrugged. It sounds like it belongs to you. Your father's nest egg, like you said. Suspicion clouded Lily's features. But you found it. It should be yours. Cade met her gaze. I wasn't looking for a fortune to keep, Lily. Just a lead to follow. Besides, he added, a hint of a wry smile touching his lips, a lone gunslinger doesn't have much use for fancy jewels. Lily studied him, her initial fear slowly giving way to a cautious trust. There was something in Cade's eyes, a weariness and a quiet honesty, that resonated with her own solitary existence. What will you do? She asked. Cade shrugged again. Ride on. There's always another horizon. The weight of the decision seemed to lift from Lily's shoulders. A fragile smile touched her lips, the first genuine smile Cade had seen on her face. Thank you, she whispered, the word filled with a profound gratitude. As Lily began to gather the gold and jewels, carefully placing them back in the chest, Cade watched her, a strange sense of peace settling over him. He had come to Redemption Gap seeking treasure, but he had found something far more valuable, a chance to offer a small measure of kindness in a world often defined by greed and violence. But the quiet moment was shattered by the sound of approaching horses. The heavy thud of hooves on the dusty ground echoed through the deserted town. Cade's hand instinctively went to his gun again. He moved quickly to the window, peering out. A small posse, led by a stern-faced man in a dusty sheriff's badge, was riding into Redemption Gap. Trouble, Cade muttered, turning back to Lily. Looks like the law. Lily's face paled. They must have tracked you. Cade shook his head. I haven't been seen. They're likely just passing through, or maybe someone finally decided to check out this ghost town. But he knew, deep down, that their arrival was no coincidence. Silas the Serpent's treasure had been lost for years. But the sheriff and his men dismounted in front of the saloon, their eyes scanning the dilapidated building with suspicion. "Stay here, Lily," Cade said quickly. "And keep quiet." He moved towards the back of the saloon, his senses on high alert. The front door creaked open, and the sheriff stepped inside, his hand resting on his gun. "Hello?" His voice boomed through the dusty silence. "Anyone here?" Cade watched from the shadows, his own gun drawn but concealed. He had no quarrel with the law, but he wasn't about to let them take the treasure that rightfully belonged to this girl. The sheriff's gaze fell upon the open chest, the glint of gold catching his eye. His expression hardened instantly. Well, what have we here?" The game had changed again. The hidden treasure had been uncovered, not just by a lone gunslinger, but now by the long arm of the law. And Lily's hope for a new beginning hung precariously in the balance.